with us. Remember, we are coming to you live from the Beverly Oasis Suites here in Hamden Lowlands. A beautiful place for you to stay for the Christmas season. If you haven't made your decision yet and you're still deciding, should I come to Tobago? Of course you should come to Tobago. Should I stay at the Beverly Oasis Suites? Of course you should. So come on down and spend your beautiful Christmas season here. We begin conversations this morning and we're speaking with the director of TEMA this morning, Mr. Allan Stewart. As you are aware, we experienced some really heavy rainfall yesterday. Some showers that, wow, I told you at 4:30 yesterday morning, I was awakened by how heavy the rainfall was, and I was wondering, would I make it to work yesterday? But you guys saw me there yesterday bringing you the information as it were. And so we're going to be speaking to the expert this morning as he gives us the information, what we can expect and how we can prepare for this season. Good morning, Mr. Stewart, and welcome.
Good morning to you, and also good morning to all of Tobago and our wider viewers across the world.
Yes, and you know, we are in the rainy season, and from my estimation, of course, I'm no expert at all in this field. I feel as if we didn't have much rainfall during the season, what we call the rainy season, from about July all the way down. But we've been seeing, we've been seeing more heavy rainfall coming down into November, December. Not consistently, but when it comes down, it comes down. So we're here now. We were under yellow alert yesterday.
That's good.
And based on what we read in the news this morning, we're still kind of under that alert, kind of watch. And we saw a little damage. So we want to talk about the rainfall yesterday and what happened on the island of Tobago before we get into the other parts of the conversation.
Oh, very well. Well, yesterday, as well said, that the island of Tobago and also Trinidad was placed on a yellow level, which means that they were suggesting to us that there will be hazard related to hydrometeorological events. And that made true in the sense that just around after 5, or should I say we start seeing rainfall just after 2, 3 o'clock in the wee hours of the morning, and that can be interpreted as adverse weather conditions. The rain was very persistent, and as a result, there were several reports received up to late yesterday evening, about 16 reports, some of which were very challenging. We had one such on the North Side Road, which up to late yesterday evening, or sometime yesterday evening, we were still doing some level of cleanup in that area because it was a bit technical. What you had a tree or trees fell across power lines in the Devines Road area, and just after you pass Cocaton Trace or Coca Trace. And as a result of that, it required a bit of maneuvering from not just going and cut the tree, but also to remove the debris. It required the power to be removed. However, there were some calculations made by TNTech in regards to another event that was happening simultaneously in the Speyside area. And having removed the power, it means that all of Castara and those villages beyond would have been without electricity. So it had to be calculated, and but at the end of the day, the work was done, and I want to thank the relevant authorities for their quick response and the coordination effort. The staff at TEMA coordinating these responses things went quite well with the cooperation of everyone. So we would have seen villages like in the Bacalet area, Blackrock, Dillaford, some extent, and Golden Lane, Frenchfield, Lowlands, Mason Hall, Moriah, Plymouth, and also I mentioned Devines Road, Studley Park, and Wim. These were the areas that were impacted. And the categories in terms of, you had 3 fallen trees, you have 3 riverine reports, you had about 4 landslides across the island. You also had blocked road as a result of that debris blocking the roadway, flooding incidents and flooding threats. These flooding events were what you call flash flooding. For example, along the Bacalet stretch, in the vicinity of Bacalet on the Old Road, or what you call the Windward Road in Bacalet. That area, we had some heavy rainfall coming down all the way from Mason Hall, coming down and causing these problems. We also had one roof report, and we had one collapsed structure. I'm still yet to get the detail in terms of where exactly that was located. But what is fortunate for us, we did not see any major damages as a result of the rainfall that we had yesterday. But there was some disruptions. It means that persons in the east, Castara, Palativere, and further upfield, some people were unable to get to work. There was some disruption in the transportation system. Buses were not able to go in to do the necessaries in that area as well. And these are some of the things. There were power outages as a result of that. The period of time for the restoration work to be done mean that you had to remove the electricity from the supply in order to carry out the repair work. Today, what you will see happening is that we'll do mopping up. So the authorities will be going back out there. Teams from the IQUD, along with their equipment, will be doing the necessaries. Maybe in some cases, fire service may be asked to do some flushing on certain roads. I know such is the situation at Wim, that connector road between Wim and the Plymouth Road, that they call the Old Wim Road, just near to the school area there, and the Anglican Church up in Wim. That road, there was a large amount of slush on that road. I know definitely that will need some clearance, so we asked the motorists, the traveling public, to know that the hills are still susceptible to slope failures, and therefore we are asking both pedestrians and also the traveling public to exercise due caution.
And I echo your sentiments there, especially in speaking to motorists, because yesterday, in the heavy downpour, of course, your driving habits have to change. Where usually on the highway you would drive at 80 kilometers an hour. When it's raining heavily, you have to reduce your speed because, it's raining so heavily you could barely see what's in front of you. And of course, the roadways are wet. And I'm telling you, I saw vehicles driving as if nothing was happening, overtaking on the highway. And I'm thinking, people say we need to be very, very cautious. And we don't want to create a situation where we have to depend heavily on the agencies who are there, yes, to help us when we end up in situations like yesterday. That was a natural occurrence. And so TEMA had to come out, CERT had to come out, fire service had to come out. But if you're reckless, then you're making a demand on services that are there for emergencies. And of course, when there's an emergency, they have to attend to a situation that could be avoided. So I'm just putting a plug there for you,
yes,
and the TEMA, so that we as, human behavior can change and adapt to situations around us, and that we can be responsible when we are going out there, because you don't want to go out there and cause an incident occurring when there should be cleaning up and helping those who really are blocked off. You're dealing with a situation like that. And I know you said the cleanup efforts will continue today. The agencies are going out today and they will continue. In terms of what is to come, because we're talking about, we still have a couple more. How much longer do we have in the rainy season? And as I mentioned earlier, there wasn't much, but it's coming now. So what can we look forward to in the coming weeks as the rainy season continues?
I was privileged to listen to the meteorological service yesterday doing a presentation at the multidisciplinary committee that is set up by the ODPM, of which TEMA is also a part. Something similar to our Tobago Disaster Management Committee. And there is an expectation that there can be additional rainfall. What is happening in these episodes, you find as a result of climate change and climate variability, that these rainfall episodes are very strange in terms of the occurrences. You saw last year in 2023, we had a similar situation that impacted Charlottesville, where you have these weather systems sometimes just lingering, and they sometimes deposit a large amount of water. Climate change is real, and it's having its toll on our across the world, and causing real disruptions as it relates to hazards associated with hydrometeorological events. And they are very costly as well. And we will continue to see these episodes. I know that the intent of the international bodies across the world, especially United Nations, is for us to cut back on fossil fuel. The use of fossil fuel across the world is one of the agendaed items which they are making strong efforts towards reducing the usage of such. Until such time, we will continue to see these weather events impacting us. I think your question may have linked more to what we can see for the rest of the year going forward. As you know, the hurricane season runs from the 1st of June to the 30th of November. But in the last decade or so, we have been seeing these, 2 decades or so, we have been seeing these weather events happening, going beyond that hurricane season. And so there is that strong possibility, and we are seeing the impact of these adverse weather conditions on our population. It means that we have to continue to build resilience at all levels. At the community level, we have seen our offerings where CERT 1000 is concerned in making some traction. And climate financing becomes a very important thing. The Tobago House of Assembly will be stretched and pushed to be very involved in climate financing. You know, United Nations and these bodies are pushing funds in that direction where communities can make themselves resilient. It's what it takes in terms of making the adjustment. It means that we have to look at our infrastructure, our roadways. We can't use slipper drains on the road as the drains. We have seen it common in across the Caribbean, where the techniques sometimes used from the engineering point of view, those adaptation needs to take place increasingly, where you can sufficiently position yourself as being resilient. And without such, then we will be losing the war. We just responding to these events. And it's something that we have become accustomed to. Given our circumstances here in Tobago, we are about 17 to 22 miles away from Trinidad, and therefore moving resources from one part of the country to the next has been always a challenge. So it has always been the ambition for those of us who are tagged with the responsibility to do risk management. We have embraced the whole concept of comprehensive disaster management, and a huge lot of it is based on these common hazards that we are exposed to. And therefore, we have to continue to build better, choose where we build, until such time where legislative authority give us the power to permit persons from building where they build and how they build. It's already set, and therefore contingency measures comes into the picture. You have to just do contingency plans to say, well, okay, as a result of this will happen, and therefore you prepare to respond. And but comprehensive disaster speaks to how you mitigate against these factors and how you approach it. So I am leaning on the leadership of the Tobago House of Assembly. You know, Farley Augustine is doing a tremendous job at that. You know, he's a very strong leader and very detailed in his approaches, and therefore we are encouraged by that. And I'm asking the Tobago public, you know, to put in the 7% more into your construction to make yourself a very hard target.
Yeah. And, you know, I was just about to ask about in terms of the conversation, because you're talking about resilience, building capacity in terms of, you know, strengthening our position to be more resilient, as you mentioned. And I was wondering, what is the conversation like from a TEMA standpoint in terms of the persons who have the authority to build that type of capacity? Where is TEMA in terms of ensuring the conversation is had, ensuring that you put forward your strong points in terms of making the recommendations and the collaborative efforts with all the agencies to ensure we get to that place? I know it's not going to happen overnight, but in terms of where are we now and what is happening to get us to where we need to be so that we can be more resilient and that we can become a hard target, as you mentioned, so that we could stand the test of time, because things are going to happen. You know, where are we where that is concerned?
For us, in Tobago, we have bought into one of the main mandates of the United Nations, which speaks to making cities resilient. So we have seen Tobago, we position ourselves as being transformed, see a transformation taking place in Tobago that is, we can see that the island, we want to make it resilient. We want to ensure that we are adaptable. We want to ensure that there is inclusiveness with everyone, bringing them around the table. A people-centered approach to how we do things, as I mentioned earlier on, where we were working along with CERT 1000 Strong, where we sustainable manage and we also, what should I say, leverage our resources with strong governance arrangement, because that is critically important. These arrangements, I can see causing a reduction in risk, disaster risk. That is where we have to go. When we look at the island, it cannot be just an agency responding to these elements. It's a whole of country approach where we recognize what is happening to us here in the Caribbean, being part of what you call the SIDS, Small Island Developing States. And we are part of these archipelagos of islands from Saba come right down to Trinidad. And as a result of that, we are within the hurricane belt, and therefore we really have to gallop. In other words, I am very much accustomed to hearing the term enhance, but I think we are at a stage, we are way behind time in terms of, and it requires an aggressive approach to risk reduction, recognizing that this is our life, and therefore the cost of managing these risks is going to continue to be very expensive. Earth movements and slope movements, building retaining walls, they are very expensive work activity. And therefore, it requires that our engineers or artisans, the people who are involved in trade today, to understand that good thing is not cheap and cheap things are not good. So therefore, the techniques employed in your work effort must be able to stand the test of times and the hazards to which they are going up against. Buildings must be built properly, proper reinforcement, paying attention to building codes, approaches, financing of projects is something that the state needs to get involved in a direct and a more closer effort needs to be paid. For example, small buildings such as residential properties, you can see that there's a high level of risk there, where sometimes these buildings, if they are not built properly, they become missiles to buildings that have followed codes. So we have to address all these things in the conversation. We have to make sure that we live in a seismic part of the world where the Caribbean and the North American plate are behaving in a particular way. One of the things we know, it doesn't produce tsunamis to that extent because of how the plate boundaries behave. But on the other hand, we have seen, going back to the 1997 episodes, what earthquakes can do to our very way of life and also our economy. I have seen it disrupted our entire library and bus terminus. Aquifers popped all over the place, and our road networks were disturbed as a result of these seismic events. And therefore, these are the realities that we are living with. We live in a very hazard-prone place, although it's the best part of the world to live. But the magma chamber and the earth have its work to do. And therefore, as we associate ourselves with these, as the earth tries to correct itself, doing its own thing, we have to understand that we share this space. We live on the surface of the earth, and therefore these hazards will be with us, and therefore we have to make certain adaptation in order to treat with them.
And you know, you were quite clear and detailed in some of the adaptations that we can make as the average man.
Yes.
I mean, the agencies have their responsibility, but we also do have ours. And I want to make that, you know, that emphasis on the building codes. When we're building homes, I know sometimes you might not have the necessary resources to ensure you have, you know, probably what you're looking for. But let us try to remember that every time we put up a building, it impacts well, let's say water flow or whatever. I don't know all the scientific terms, but what I'm saying is let us try to build as much to code as possible, or even surpass, because we want to ensure that we are not a hindrance. We are not part of the problem. We're not adding to the situation that is currently and constantly expanding across the globe. It's not just a Tobago thing, but we have to make sure that we do our part. Build your homes to code, ensure you have, make sure your contractor understands the topography of your space that you're going to build on. Make sure you get the approvals that you need to get to make sure that we don't contribute to the disaster that is happening globally. Climate change, as Mr. Stewart said, is actually very, very real, and it is impacting our lives. So pay attention to what you're doing, pay attention to your surroundings. TEMA is here on the island of Tobago to ensure that they lend that measure of support when these incidents occur. And they also put out information in terms of public awareness so that you know where you can go to contact them for information, how you can prepare your home for when a disaster is said to be approaching, or even if it's happening. There are contact numbers, there are things that you can do. So you want to pay attention to TEMA, you can call them at 211 to ensure you get the information there, and log your reports if you have any reports coming in as it relates to disasters. The support is there. But ladies and gentlemen, let us do our part as the layman, as somebody who doesn't have all the information, but at least you know what is happening and what is required of you. Let us take our responsibilities serious and preserve the space that we live in. We can make an impact, but you have to be very intentional about it. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been speaking with Mr. Allan Stewart, Director of TEMA, and we're talking about natural disasters, specifically heavy rainfall, what we can do, what TEMA is doing, what the agencies are doing, and how you and I can help in this cause to preserve our lives, our homes, and our properties. We have to go for a short break before we continue conversations here in studio. And our studio, of course, is at Beverly Oasis.